420 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is right here. So hello and welcome to the Cannabis Show. My name is producer Vince, and here's your host, Ricardo Baca.
Dude, Vince, thank you for that, brother, and thanks to everybody joining us today. Welcome to the Cannabist Show, where we talk about all things weed.
Hashtag all things weed.
That's the serious marijuana news, of which there was a lot of this week.
Too much.
And the fun stuff as well. In fact, if you pop on to the Cannabist right now, you can read stories about a man walking through an Oregon park and discovering a porta potty almost full to its ceiling with harvested cannabis plants.
We have pics of the poopy pot.
To prove it, yeah, sure. About Colorado cannabis group Starbuds and its continuing battle with the city of Denver.
Started over smells, don't forget that.
And about a massive bust of nearly 20,000 marijuana plants growing illegally on Pike National Forest land in southern Colorado.
That's right, it can still be illegal in Colorado.
Producer Vince, the man, the myth. How are you doing, man?
You know, I'm here. And I'm pumped, and I'm ready, and I'm excited. Broncos season officially starts in Denver, at least this Saturday, with the first preseason game at home. I'll be at Mile High Stadium, which is not open vape field at Mile High, apparently. But I'll be making pictures of one of my favorite football teams again. How you been, Ricardo?
Dude, I am ready for the Broncos. Although I will say, preseason, who really cares? I recorded the game against the Bears. I almost forgot who we played. I definitely forgot to watch it because...
That's a stoner moment, not a who cares moment.
Well, no, I think it's definitely a preseason NFL football moment. You know, football games, 3 hours, Vince. Who has the time? So I try and regulate my time, my football watching time, to the regular season, when there's something on the line, when our starters are on the field, when it matters, Vince.
Preseason's when I get to take pictures. That's what I care about.
Oh, there you go. That's cool.
Yeah, man.
And I appreciate that. But Vince, let's move along. Let's move this show along. We're here to talk about marijuana. Are you ready for this thing we call Week in Weed?
If you insist on me talking about marijuana, I am more than willing to do this Week in Weed. Let's do it, brother.
I insist, and it is your job, my friend. Let's start this Week in Weed in the D.C. area, where the Drug Enforcement Administration last week finally announced its decision on a couple years-old petitions to reschedule cannabis. Now, as you all know by now, the DEA denied the rescheduling petitions on Thursday morning last week because of recommendations it received from the Food and Drug Administration and the Department of Health and Human Services. The DEA told us last week, quote, "Everything we do, everything we're governed by is contained within the Controlled Substances Act," end quote.
You know, of course, this news did not go over too well in legalization circles, and personally, I preferred this quote that the DEA gave to our colleague Alicia Wallace, quote, "People should not get hung up on this idea that the DEA somehow is still a big, bad wolf. We are not. We are engaged with the medical community. We have new strategies. We realize that we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem," end quote.
And that's big. You know, them acknowledging this is certainly a changed agency, even if it's not a changed scheduling. But there was lots more news in the DEA's rescheduling denial, including a policy change the agency says will make things easier for researchers and private companies to grow or obtain marijuana for study. Because until now, the only federally legal place for scientists to obtain cannabis for study was at a lab from the University of Mississippi. But now the DEA is opening the application process to others, and it will take years, Vince.
And CNN medical correspondent Sanjay Gupta is not having it. He's not buying it. He wrote a scathing column that questioned the DEA's rescheduling decision and also said he doesn't think the research policy changes will make it much easier to study the medical benefits of cannabis.
You know, officials and regulators at every level of American government reacted to the DEA's decision last week. Oregon Governor Kate Brown, she said, quote, "The DEA's decision only went half the distance," end quote. A congressman from Colorado called the decision, quote, "frustrating, unscientific, and frankly out of touch." And a spokeswoman with the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board said the agency will, quote, "continue to urge the federal government to reassess its position on marijuana's classification."
You know, we've obviously been hounding this story, all the quotes. We've called everybody. So come on over to the cannabis.co and check out all of our coverage on this very important issue.
You know, it is. It's one of the biggest stories of the year on this subject. But moving right along, Vince, elsewhere in the week in weed, we have some new marijuana sales and tax numbers out of Colorado, and this new data tells a very modern story.
Yeah, it does, Ricardo, and I think a lot of people are surprised by these new numbers.
You know, here they are. Let's just lay them out for everybody to hear them. June 2016, Colorado pot shops sold more than $110 million of cannabis. That's nearly $600 million of weed sales in the first half of 2016 alone, and analysts say that these 2016 sales are on pace to reach $1.35 billion by the end of the year.
I get stumbling over, man. That's a lot of numbers. A lot of numbers. But the one to remember here is this one. 1.35 billion with a B dollars in marijuana sales. And that's from only one medium-sized at best American state with a population of 5.4 million people.
I know, you have to keep that in perspective, right? Because imagine what those revenues would look like if California and its 38.8 million residents say yes to recreational cannabis in November, right? So it's a lot of money, but a lot of people want to know too, what do these taxes look like? So here they are. In the first half of 2016, Colorado has amassed more than $88 million in taxes and fees for medical and recreational cannabis. Now, of that, more than $25 million is going towards school construction projects, and that number will look more like $40 million by the end of the year for the very first time. $40 million, that magic number, Vince.
That's huge. At least it sounds huge. $40 million is a big number, but it's important to remember that even in our medium-sized at best state here in Colorado, our budget is a lot bigger. It's drops in the bucket compared to how much we really have to go forward spending. So larger states will be able to, tax and gain revenue from something that's already being sold across their state, but it's not changing history or anything, right, Ricardo?
Yeah, it's a good point. Remember when we had State Senator Pat Stedman on the couch last year, and he really put it in perspective. $40 million for schools. It sounds like a lot, but really that's going to build you one brand new middle school or two really well-equipped elementary schools. Really, it's not meant to build entire schools from nothing. It's meant to, give this school a new track, give this school a new air conditioning system, and this one a new, gymnasium. It really is for those minor touch-ups. It's not for education. We have an interesting editorial on the site this week pointing out that this is not going to save our schools, but it is helping. So, yeah, it's all about perspective on this issue, Vince. But, hey, it's time to bring out our first guest, and her company is a staffing agency specific to the marijuana industry. Fascinating. So it's my pleasure to welcome Carson Humiston to the Cannabist Show.
Hey.
Hey.
How's it going?
Great. How are
to
you?
See you? Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming on out. We've never met before.
I know, first time.
I know, but
I've
you've
seen
been
you. You're famous, so great to meet you.
Well, I have this talk show. I have a talk show. Yeah. How long have you been in the industry?
About 2 years.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
2 years. So I've been following
So you're
you.
newer than I am.
Yep.
Nice.
Newer than you.
Carson, indica or sativa? Where are you at on the spectrum?
Indica.
You are? Okay. Why?
I just prefer it.
That's
Yeah. Just,
You like the weed that takes you down a
Yeah,
notch.
exactly. Kind of helps you relax, fall asleep a little bit. Yeah.
Is that primarily what you use it for, is at night and to help you sleep?
Definitely.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, you are CEO, president of Vangst Talent Network, and that's a staffing agency in the marijuana industry. You serve all the recreational states and some of the medical states.
Yep.
Impressive resume, but I love having different people on the couch from different industries and different segments of this industry, specifically because you guys can tell us how this has its unique challenges that other industries don't have. So what are the cannabis industry's unique staffing challenges that don't exist in other sections?
Absolutely. Well, one of the main challenges that we see kind of over and over again is overcoming the cannabis hurdle. So often we're recruiting candidates out of other industries, right? Maybe somebody's looking for a vice president of sales, and they're interested in somebody who has experience building out sales teams. So maybe they want to have reps in different locations. And so we're actively sourcing these people. We're messaging people on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of pushback when you tell them that this is for a cannabis company, right? They're in a
pushback from the people that you're trying to recruit.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So that's kind of the first step, giving them the facts, showing them the opportunities in this industry, and getting them excited to bring their experience over and apply it to this industry. So definitely, that's something that we face that not a lot of other industries use, having to almost convince the candidates on why this is the next best thing for them to do.
Sure.
That's certainly a challenge. Another challenge is recruiting the candidates who are currently employed in the space. A lot of them aren't up on any type of job board or even on LinkedIn. And so through throwing different networking events, we do something called Buds and Beers, where we invite industry employees to come over. You should come sometime.
Sure, I'd love to.
Come to our office, have a beer on us, and it's just a way for us to network with these candidates. And maybe we don't have the job for them today, but when the job comes along, we'll have their profile in our system, we'll know them, and we can shoot them an email. Hey, we found something that's of interest to you. You're already working in the space. We got to know you at this networking event. And, not just relying on a Craigslist or different job boards to find talent, actually actively networking with the talent before we even need them.
What I'm interested in is how often are you recruiting? Is there a certain percentage that you could estimate, like this much of my time is spent specifically recruiting people on LinkedIn and other services?
Yeah, I would say about 60% of our time is actually spent actively sourcing. This isn't a cannabis statistics, it's just a statistic in general. 70% of people who are open to new opportunities aren't actively looking. So if you rely on job boards, if you rely on Indeed, Monster, Craigslist, you're essentially shutting yourself out of 70% of the people out there who are great. So I would say the majority of the recruiting that we do is outbound. If somebody just wanted to hire their own person, they could just post on Craigslist themselves and not use us.
Can you give us an example? Of course, not using any names of companies, but somebody who you've had to talk into. Hey, you might be interested in this.
Sure.
I know weed has a stigma, but this is a big business. Me and Vince were just talking $1.3 billion by the end of the year in this small state alone. So give us an example of how that conversation goes.
I'll give you it. I can probably do a name drop here. So we have. This guy named David Holtz, and he's the vice president of marketing at one of our favorite clients, Sancell CBD. And he was the creative director at a big agency. And he had had rolling out a bunch of different brands. And so building the brand identity and then pushing it into different markets. And I had seen his profile on LinkedIn, I was just looking for these types of creative directors who have had experience building out brands. And so we, of course, one of our recruiters messaged him and just said, we'd love to have you for a coffee to chat about some opportunities we have in the cannabis industry. And he actually did respond, and he said, I'm not really sure that I'm interested in this industry, but we'd love to chat. And then we had him in for coffee, and like you were just some of the statistics you were just giving, we have kind of a one-sheeter which we walk through with the candidates, and we were talking with him about it, and we said, hey, let's bring you out to our client in Pueblo. We'd love for you to meet them, see the facility, see what their vision for the brand is, and how your experience can help with this. And he was extremely excited, and he ended up going, and he's killing it for them now. So,
oh, wow. How long has he been down there?
I think about 5 months.
Wow, good for you guys. So a lot of what you do isn't like ground floor level, like, hey, this company needs budtenders, this company needs delivery drivers. It's really at the executive level.
Right. We definitely do those types of positions, the ones that we're seeing a lot of high turnover in. And we've, those, it's not like we don't do those, but those are a little bit easier to fill than these higher level positions. And so while we do those ones are not as big of a sell, right? You're posting a job, you're getting flooded with applicants, and you're more filtering through the applicants. It's more inbound than outbound for the entry level roles.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The last time you and I talked, all via email, but you were throwing a pretty sizable cannabis career fair here in Denver. But you mentioned that you're starting to see this trend in the space that definitely caught my attention. Marijuana companies outside of Colorado are now going out of their way, you said, to hire people with Colorado marijuana experience.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes they're really going out of their way because they want people who have this experience in the first state to do it. So tell us more about this. This is really happening.
Yeah, this is really happening, and quite a few different clients have hired us to do this. And it's interesting because I was initially expecting it to be mostly head grower, that type of position.
Sure.
But we've seen it for COOs, CEOs, and even managers. To give you an example on the management level, which I just found very interesting, we had a client in Las Vegas relocate somebody from Colorado, gave them a pay increase of $20,000 and a relocation package. And, you know, she had experience managing a pretty large dispensary here, and she was actually already interested in relocating and presented it to her, and she relocated, and now she's sort of district manager managing 3 different stores.
All in Nevada?
All in Nevada.
Interesting.
Like Henderson, Reno, and Vegas.
What do you think it is about that? Is it just nobody's been doing it longer than we have, and it's an intense regulated environment, and they want somebody from that background, or what?
Yeah, I think that obviously that's a big part of it, and also just that experience doesn't really exist in Nevada. He wasn't going to be able to find somebody who had managed 10 different, they call them agents in Nevada, but budtenders here who had that experience hiring budtenders, who had the experience in training them, who had the experience, that specific experience is hard to find from other states just because nobody's really doing it.
Sure.
As much as they are here.
I think it's so interesting, and it makes sense. I mean, we probably have some friends in common who have been recruited already to other places in Nevada, California, Illinois.
And we have clients who are gearing up, even clients who don't necessarily have the license yet. It's so interesting. I was on the phone on my way here with a client from Michigan, and he is actively recruiting right now a CEO and a COO. He was out here last week going to meet with candidates, and they're having, it's almost as though they're replacing what his opinion was, almost using the candidate to help him get it off the ground, from the day one. So I just think it's really cool to see.
I love that part of the story, so thank you for sharing that. I think it's really interesting. I mentioned earlier you throw these marijuana job fairs.
Yep.
And we talked about this last time a little bit, but I want you to expand.
Sure.
There are things people do at any career fair that they shouldn't. And going back to 2014, I remember the first big cannabis job fair in Colorado. Hundreds of people lying around the block, whatever.
Yep.
Very interesting scene, but I remember we were getting questions because we broke the story that it was happening. Hey, is this 420 friendly? What should we wear? And you're asking me what you should wear, and it's like, well, I'm probably not going to take the time to respond to this email, but we just quickly found out that a lot of people don't know how to behave at a career fair, especially when it's a career fair for cannabis. So give us an idea of some of the things not to do at a marijuana career fair.
Definitely don't come to the marijuana career fair high.
Ideally, right?
I think that's a big step. Dress.
This is not a place for consumption.
This is not a place for consumption.
Yeah.
The venue we had it at didn't even allow consumption.
Sure.
So strictly no consumption. And we did some email blasts trying to make this clear. Dress the way that you want to be treated. I think that's really a motto that everybody should follow all the time. And so, I'm not saying that this is like you're going into a finance career fair where you need to wear a suit and tie, but don't come in looking like you just got out of bed. Kind of clean yourself up, look professional, bring enough copies of your resume so that you're not. We had people asking us, hey, can we use our printer? We only brought one resume. Well, no, why would you bring one resume to the career fair?
Sure, okay.
I think the etiquette post the career fair is the most important tip that we've seen people make mistakes in. You go to the career fair, you hand over your resume. We had over 2,000 people come to the career fair and hand out the resume booth to booth to booth.
Sure.
And so just by doing that isn't enough. I think that these candidates need to say to, let's say you're hiring, hey, was there good contact information to follow up with you? I can send you an electronic copy. Would love to get together. Be a little bit proactive. And then after the career fair, make those follow-ups with the companies that you're interested in pursuing, because I was watching the vendors, the people that had the booths, walk out with stacks of resume this big, and I just can't imagine that they're going, you know, I'm sure they start a few of them, but
Sure.
people get lost in the cracks.
And that's great advice for any job fair
yeah.
of any kind, but especially in this industry, I think it shows a certain amount of forethought, professionalism. If, you know, that afternoon, the next day, hey, Ricardo, we met yesterday at the career fair, just wanted to follow up. A brief, thoughtful reminder. I think that's always welcome when you're dealing with executives or people who are hiring in the professional realms. So.
Brief and thoughtful. I'll give you a story about something that someone did to me. Sent calendar invite after calendar invite for an interview, and it's like, we're going to schedule. Thanks for the reminder. I don't need your. So some people get aggressive with it, and that's kind of the fine line. Okay, let's do a reminder. You don't need to send 10 calendar invites every day for 8 a.m. I think that's a bit aggressive. So fine line.
Don't do that when you're looking for a job. Also, don't do that when you're looking for coverage. I have a contact who has sent me a couple of calendar invites for lunch. A lunch I've never agreed to. And I'm just like, okay, dude, definitely not answering. Definitely not showing up. Interesting methodology, though.
We've had people drop off all kinds of gifts and with their resume attached and everything, and it's very thoughtful. Definitely makes you stand out, and we'll respond to you when we can, or when the right opportunity comes, or you know, it's not like we're leaving people hanging. We say, we'll get back to you, but we didn't agree to an interview yet. So.
There's a lot of material here. And I'm glad we're going to talk about this more a little bit later.
Great.
Some hiring practices, best practices.
Sure.
Until then, Carson, thank you for joining us on the couch. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I want to throw to our very own Doctor of Dank, Professor Pat, for this week's entry in the new Cannabis Lexicon.
Cottonmouth. When you smoke weed and your mouth gets dry. Cottonmouth is often accompanied by its cousin known as the munchies. As in, for example, ugh, that Romulan gave me wicked cottonmouth. We have to get something to drink.
And thank you for that, Professor Pat. Our next guest is also making his first appearance on the show. He's the CEO of an industry-leading infused edibles brand. So please help me in welcoming Andrew Schrot to the Cannabis Show. Hey, man.
Hey.
Pleasure finally meeting you.
Yeah, great to meet you.
I love it. Two people on the couch, never met before in my life, and I've been meaning to. So welcome to the Cannabis Show.
Thank you.
And Andrew, indica or sativa?
How about indica and CBD? I'll generally use the products at night to help myself relax and sleep. So it's a common use for edibles, and find it helps me.
And what do you think helps you sleep more, the indica or the CBD, or a combination, kind of whole plant?
The indica definitely helps with the relaxation quite a bit more. I find that one gives you that nice sedation effect. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. You run marijuana edibles company, Blue Kudu. You've sold more than 1 million chocolate bars, and I love this part of your story. Your dad is a physician in Florida,
right.
And as you told me earlier, he was originally against this idea that cannabis can be medicine. So I was hoping you might share that story with everybody.
Sure. Yeah. When I originally, I'm from Florida, and when I originally told my family that I was moving out here to start a cannabis business, pretty much my entire family was a little bit skeptical about it, including my dad. So my dad did quite a bit more research into it, looked into the medical applications. At that time, the two big states were obviously Colorado and California. This was back in 2010.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And yeah, he's come around quite a bit over the last several years. In fact, he actually just had an article published on the benefits of cannabis. So,
in what journal and what specific thrust?
It was a journal. It was a journal in Great Britain.
Oh, okay.
An online journal directed towards physicians, and his article likewise was also directed towards physicians. So it was more of a guidance and an opening introduction to physicians who weren't familiar with cannabis, what we have going on here in the U.S. as far as the different diagnoses that doctors use for the product, and yeah, it's cannabis is a complex product, as we know, with 400 plus different compounds in it. So there's a lot of different uses,
of which are largely unstudied.
Right. So that's kind of where his article was directed.
And what's your dad's specific area of expertise? And also, do you guys now have conversations like, oh, did you see that new study the Washington Post wrote about, or whatever?
Yeah, he's a family medicine physician. He's currently retired.
Okay.
But yeah, we have a lot of conversations. In fact, one of the reasons that I originally decided to move out here was back in the beginning of 2010. The doctors' offices, how crowded they were with everybody going to get their reg cards, and it was awesome. I came out here on a trip, and it was awesome to see all the patients that were in there. How happy they were to get safe, legal access to cannabis, and all the different reasons that they had to, their desire to get the card. So that was actually what kind of sprouted the conversation about, the medicinal benefits of the product.
And 2010 was an interesting time because, you're talking about legal medical here since 2000, but the dispensary system and infrastructure really wasn't there until 2009, 2010. And once the shops were there, then suddenly they needed some patients to fill those shops. And you're right, those were some full waiting rooms and
Changed
some very active. Let's move along because, going from 2010 to 2014, by then you've been operating for a couple years, and at that time I had just started in this capacity, maybe 3-4 months previous, and one of the first big pieces I did involved me going out buying 10 different edibles from 10 different brands and testing them in a state-certified facility for potency. Andrew, you know where the story is going. I don't know that many other readers do because this was a long time ago, but I wanted to test edibles for potency because I had experiences with a number of brands that I knew these regulated products weren't giving consumers what they were promising to. If it says there's 10 milligrams of activated THC in that piece, 20 milligrams of activated THC in a cookie, whatever it was at that time, I just knew that some of these things were off. And when we did the testing, 2 companies were very close to what the promised amounts were. Growing Kitchen makes edibles out of Boulder Still. They had 101 milligrams of activated in a product labeled for 100, and Blue Kudu had 105 in a product labeled for 100. Those were the 2 closest. I mean, to give you an idea of the disparity there, one of the companies had 0.3 milligrams of activated THC in the entire product. It was supposed to be 100 milligrams. That's 1/500th of the promised amount. Actually, the CEO of that company, that was Dr. J's, the CEO, Tom Sterlacci, was supposed to be a guest on the show about 3, 4, 5 months ago. And he came in, and I was like, all right, we're going to talk about the testing from 2014, and he walked out.
Yeah, he did not like that conversation.
It was amazing and so strange. But your brand did very, very well. You tested on point, and this is the first time we've ever met, so props.
Thank you for doing that article. That was great to see.
Potency testing is important, and it should be important to everybody. You take it especially personally. So tell me why it's especially important to you.
That's very important. It's right up there with the most important things that we do in our operation is ensure that we make a quality, consistent product. When I first moved out here in 2010, pretty much none of the brand name edibles that you'll see around at this time existed. And a lot of the patients that were looking for high pain patients that were looking for products to make them more comfortable, they didn't trust them. They didn't trust that, not only did they not trust the product, they really had no idea what was going into it as far as what the THC was actually in the product versus the label. So we've taken it upon ourselves. One thing that was important to us is actually creating our own product from scratch, not trying to individually dose each piece. We more so dose each product or each individual product altogether. So we look at the oil that we add in as another ingredient in our recipe each time we make a batch. And
yeah, you kind of approach this mathematically, right? You have a background in math.
I was a math major in college. That's correct. So that definitely helped somewhat. I created our formulas to for the recipes, but we found that really helps, you know, get a homogeneity, a homogeneous product where the THC is evenly mixed throughout each chocolate bar that we make. So,
well, plus, I mean, talk a little bit about being a patient in this space. We're talking 2 months into legal recreational sales, and if you don't have that medical card, you're buying on the recreational market, and you're trying different brands, and what happens if this 10 milligrams treats you really different than this 10 milligrams? That can lead you to a really negative experience ultimately.
That's not good for the industry overall. That's not good for any edibles company for that to be. So the state has gone, I think, taken some very positive steps in that manner to ensure that every product is homogeneously mixed throughout. So you can't have one. So for example, our recreational chocolate bars have 100 milligrams of THC, and they're broken into 10 squares. So we have to have a test that ensures that each square is very close to that 10 milligrams of THC. So that's one test that we have to do, as well as this is a new rule that was just implemented within the last year, is that the overall bar is within 15% of what we say on the label. So now you actually have to have that test done, whereas back when you did the article, you didn't. We actually go a little bit further. We make sure it's within 8%. We won't send anything out other than that. We aim to be within 5%. Almost everything we send out is within 5% of the label. So
good for you guys. I know, and anybody who's interested in this kind of testing element of the industry, which I think is a very important piece of this pie, and one that's still very much incomplete in Colorado at the very least, because we still don't have any state-certified labs testing for pesticide residues. It's a problem. The health department says probably sometime next year. You can check out the documentary about me and my team. It's Rolling Papers. It's on Netflix, and it pretty much details this entire experience of testing Andrew's product and a bunch of others. But I think it's an important part of this equation, and especially for the patients, because when I reported that story, I heard from a lot of people that, yeah, you know, it's a struggle going from one brand to the next, and at the time there wasn't a lot of product on shelves in general. So. But speaking of the product that I bought of yours, then I want to talk about packaging, because I have witnessed your company go through 3 different packages, structures very, very wildly different. That one I bought, it was just straight up blue foil wrapped chocolate bar. A year later, I noticed they were selling in like blue prescription medicine tubes, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's still chocolate. Oh, it is chocolate in a medicine tube, okay. And of course, it's child safe, and I'm sure a lot of this was brought forth by regulations. But now you have a new packaging. I don't know, did you bring one of your packages?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's pull it up. Right. You have new packaging that you've debuted that maybe makes it really look like a chocolate bar. You know, any gourmet chocolate bar you might buy from like Trader Joe's shelves. So I want to know, please walk us through these changes and why each of them was important.
So a lot of it is exactly what you said. So originally our product, you know, on the medical side, and before tamper or child-resistant packaging came into play, our product looked like a chocolate bar. It was wrapped in blue foil. And when the child-resistant packaging requirements came into play, there wasn't a lot of options at the time for us to use for packaging. Oops.
My bad.
Doesn't stand up quite
Dropping
often.
it. There we are.
But we, through our market research, that was one thing that we found, that the consumers didn't always recognize that inside our blue cylindrical tube that was actually a chocolate bar. Even though we had a picture of a chocolate bar on the label, you know, sometimes when you're looking at the products from a distance, depending upon where the center stores their edibles, they wouldn't recognize that. So one thing that we actually did during that time frame was we had a non-medicated wax chocolate bar that we would leave by the tube to say, hey, this is what's inside this tube. This is a chocolate bar.
Sure.
But interestingly, one of the issues that we ran into during that time was, you know, whether people worked at a center or one of our sales representatives had a table at a dispensary, you know, in the lobby area. consumers would think, hey, that's a medicated chocolate, they would walk up, even though it had a sign there saying, don't eat, this is a wax, not concentrate wax, candle wax chocolate bar. They would actually bite into it. You know, you see them spit it out, make a gross face. But so
all of the early legalization stories about things being substituted or mistaken for actual THC edibles, hilarious. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
So we wanted to make our product and the packaging look more like a chocolate bar, and so we did a lot of market research from consumers, and you know, we're fortunate that this packaging was currently available. And we actually hired one of Denver's best marketing firms, Brand Juice, to help us go through the redesign. We did a lot of research with budtenders, you know, the industry experts. They get all the feedback, all the knowledge from consumers as far as what they're looking for. And we wanted to go with something that was a little bit more high-end, that we felt like matched the high-quality products that we offer to the industry. And yeah, it was a great, fun experience to go through that and, you know, do the case studies and see what consumers thought of us and what they were looking for in packaging. So we're pretty happy with the results so far.
It's sharp, yeah.
Thank you.
We've debuted a lot of new packaging on the show before with different companies throughout the space, and and this is at the top of that field. You know, this reminds me of Vince. You remember when we had Apothecana out, James Kennedy?
Oh yeah, I do.
That was right when they were about to debut their new packaging, and that was just so slick. I could honestly see it on a shelf at Nordstrom. You know, alongside.
I kept mine when it was empty, actually. I liked it so much.
Yeah, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to bring Carson back into the conversation because, you know, Carson runs a pot-centric staffing agency, and Andrew, you're the CEO of an edibles company. I want to know what you two look for when hiring an employee. You know, we've talked about this is a very unusual time in a very unusual industry. You're hiring for yourself, you're hiring for others, but what are those, you know, those qualities that an employee might have that you really look out for, especially given that this is marijuana, it's not an airline, it's not a law firm.
Yeah.
Carson, let's start with you.
Sure. I think in this industry, and would be interested to hear if you agree, it's important to look for people who have the ability to wear a lot of different hats. So the entire industry is in startup mode. So if we're hiring for a bookkeeper, there might be a day where the bookkeeper needs to do something so entry level and something unrelated to bookkeeping, but that's going to help the team, you know, achieve whatever they need to achieve that day. So people that come in that are used to this, every single day is the exact same, nothing's going to change, this company's been the same way for 25 years, they're really going to have a hard time in this industry.
Flexibility is key.
Flexibility
that makes sense.
Key.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Passion for the industry. You have to have a passion for cannabis. You have to, I wouldn't say you have to have like maybe a specific story as to why you want to get in the industry, but you have to have, because you want, when you're looking for somebody, you want them to be with you long term. You know, everybody that you bring on, your plan is for them to stay with you, you know, as long as they can. So I think
ideally.
A passion, I think a passion for the cannabis industry is one of the first things that we'll look for in candidates that we bring onto our team. So.
And there is, you know, there's not a lacking of that. You know, I get a lot of people, you know, thinking they want to write for the Cannabist, they want to work for us, or they think that somehow I have an inside track to jobs with you guys or something. But they write me these letters full of just passion, and they are so passionate about this plant. So is that your experience as well, that people are coming into this ready and weird?
And if they have the passion, it brings out the best of them in their, you know, performance with the job. So that's
Carson,
very important.
You're hiring executives at executive levels. Is that passion for the plant, passion for this industry as important if you're looking for a COO position with a company?
I mean, I think the passion definitely has to be there. There's nobody that's just going to be able to waltz into this industry and just have any type of interest in the industry. Similarly to what you were just saying, we receive these cover letters and resumes that I'm so passionate, I'm so passionate, I'm so passionate, and that is important. And then the skill set, of course, has to, you know, for us, the passion complements the skill set. So you have this great experience, you have the skills that this business is needing, and you're going to bring passion with it as well. And those three really make up the dream candidate.
That makes sense, yeah. All right. Well, guys, it's time for the pot quiz.
All right.
I think we should just jump right in. You guys seem primed. We're going to start with you, Carson.
Okay.
And how it works is if she gets the wrong answer, you can steal the point, vice versa.
Okay.
4 questions. At the end, Vince will crown the winner with bragging rights until the next time you're back on the couch. So, Carson.
Sure.
A new study published this month in the Journal of Drug Issues found that the proportion of marijuana users who smoke daily has A, gone up, B, gone down, C, stayed the same.
A.
Hey, that is a correct answer for Carson. Well done. Well done. Yeah, and that was a particularly interesting study because it also looked at different socioeconomics involved with regular consumption and recognized that a pretty legitimate percentage of these people are lower income, poor, and this is what they're choosing to spend their money on. Of course, we're very early into this experiment, not even 3 years into legal sales, but as this data starts to come in, I think it's so interesting, you know, to put it into context of what we're seeing here, the first legal market. So, Andrew, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
In the wake of last week's DEA news, presidential candidate Hillary Clinton said she will, A, definitely reschedule marijuana, B, definitely deschedule marijuana, C, think about rescheduling marijuana, or D, think about descheduling marijuana.
It's either C or D. Whoops. Oh.
Thanks.
Let's go with C.
You say C, which is that she will think about rescheduling marijuana. No, that is not the right answer. Carson, do you have the steal?
I'm going to go with D.
D. Oh, you both thought she's thinking.
No faith and definiteness in our politics.
Well, we were the first with the quote last week. She says she will definitely reschedule marijuana if elected.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that.
I think a lot of people didn't expect it, judging by the traffic that story ended up doing. Yeah, that's one of the ones Vince was talking about earlier, but yeah, I called regulators and governors, officials in all of the legal states, and just collected a really interesting array of perspectives. And when I reached out to a former colleague who used to work with Representative Polis here out of Colorado from the House, she now works for Hillary, and she's like, oh, we're actually putting together this statement from one of her lead policy advisors. And I was like, we would love it. And sure enough, when it came over, she says she is going to do this if elected. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
All right. Carson, you ready?
Yep. I don't know. The last one sort of crushed my ego. Government major, not following.
All right. When Neil Young gets too stoned, he chews on black peppercorns. What advice did former NFL player Ricky Williams have for those who get too stoned when he appeared on Bill Simmons' HBO show Any Given Wednesday last week? Williams encouraged people to eat what?
Oh, it's an open-answered question?
Open-answered question.
I don't know.
Well, I'll give you a hint.
Sure.
It's kind of disgusting.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Kind of like black peppercorns. I really don't want to chew black peppercorns, but I've heard from so many readers that that does help them when they get too stoned. So, Ricky Williams said something else.
Can you give it away? Like, yeah, I have no idea.
No guess?
No guess.
All right. Andrew?
It's a tough one. Wow.
It is kind of a tough one, and it's also disturbing. Ricky actually ended up hitting us back on Twitter to tell us he's never done this, but he knows that it works.
Okay.
And we were like, okay.
Well, could you repeat the question? To eat something to help them.
So what advice did former NFL player Ricky Williams have for those who get too stoned when he appeared on Any Given Wednesday on HBO last week? He encouraged people to eat what?
I have no idea. I want to guess.
He said people should eat a half cup of sugar directly into the mouth.
Wow.
That's a lot of sugar. Can you imagine putting a half cup of sugar in your mouth?
Can you substitute like Kool-Aid mix or something?
Oh, that's disgusting. That's worse than Red Bull, Vince.
Okay, pixie sticks then. Just a bunch of pixie sticks.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You'd have to either see the video clip or see the story on our site. But the last question, Andrew, is yours. Yours to win, yours to lose. Name the Colorado county that last week passed one of Colorado's toughest marijuana grow ordinances.
Whoa. Let's see.
Any idea?
Nope.
There's only so many.
Yeah.
You could throw out any Colorado county.
I'll say Pueblo, but they already have it.
They have one of the most liberal grow ordinances, and they're voting on November to see if that can stand.
Yeah.
But Carson, what Colorado county just implemented one of the state's toughest grow ordinances? Any idea?
No.
Oh man, you guys have not been spending enough time on the cannabis
know.
this week. What are you doing, running marijuana companies or something? Come on, guys. Just kidding, it's Douglas County.
Okay.
So they've been tough on weed from the start, and now they are even tougher. But you guys, thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm sure we'll have both of you back. This was a good time. I want to thank my guests, Carson Humiston and Andrew Schrot. But most importantly, thanks to you guys for watching and listening to the Cannabist Show. I'm Ricardo Baca, joined by producer Vince and the rest of the crew. Have a great day, everyone. We will see you next week.
I'm allowed to lose, I choose to win, I'm all in, I'm calling any posse, you'll be raising at the end, I say it again, ain't afraid to get in, I be going for the jackpot with ace in my hand, I'm raw.